Hello, I'm President John Stewart of the Florida Bar, here filming and interviewing former president, past president Zack, who's kind enough to join us for the 70th annual Florida Bar convention, this year going 100% virtual due to what's going on in our environment and in our country. So first, I want to thank President Zack. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Even virtually, it's a real honor to be able to talk about the profession and about your great year also needs to be recognized.
Well, I appreciate that. So I have a few questions for you. So people, the few people that may not know of you will get to know you a little bit better. So you served as president of the Florida Bar from 1989 to 1990. So my first question really is just kind of looking back in that time frame going forward to today. What do you see as sort of your key takes of the major changes in our profession?
Well, there have been quite a few. I guess I'd start off with the fact that in those days, I used to welcome people on behalf of the 40,000 members of the Florida Bar. And today we're well over 100,000 members. So that has been a huge change. That's been good and it's been bad. I think that when it was smaller, there was less chance of people hiding behind numbers. In other words, everybody knew everyone, or most everyone, and you knew the person's reputation. Today, with so many people and technology being what it is, it seems to be, the practice seems to be a lot more remote. I think that's first. Second of all, it's pretty obvious that technology has been a huge difference, as reflected by the fact that we're doing this virtually right now. If it wasn't for technology, I don't know how we would survive under the current epidemic that we're facing. And people are now working from home. And I think that the new normal, even after this is hopefully over, you'll see a lot more remote practice. If the Supreme Court of the United States can have a virtual oral argument, I think that that can be done about anywhere. The court system, I think, will adapt to it. And frankly, I think it's better. I always had a problem understanding why I should spend 3 days going to Chicago for a 1-hour deposition. 1 day going, 1 day coming, and sitting around the airport. I think this is much more efficient. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we'll continue it. The other thing that is very, very obvious, fortunately, is the change in the diversity of the profession. I can see that actually when I go to different seminars or speak at different seminars, depending on the age group that's attending those seminars, it changes the more closer it is to today. Today you go to a seminar and you see probably at least 50% women. There's over 50% of women graduating from law schools. When I went to law school, in my law school class, there were 6 women. So there's been a huge change. There is also a change in the ethnicity of the practice of law. When as you know, I'm Cuban American. When we began the Cuban American Bar Association, there were 14 of us. And it started because actually, in part, I went to a hearing where my friend who had come from Cuba, I grew up in Cuba, though my father's American, so I don't have a heavy accent. My friend did, and the judge said, well, come back when you can speak English. It's outrageous to think that that could happen. It's outrageous to think that there was a men's grill where people used to have lunch and that women had to sit on the other side of a glass. It's hard to believe that existed. And the thing I wonder today is, looking back at some of the things we do today, are we going to be surprised that we didn't do a better job today?
Well, you touched on a lot of points. You have a very unique perspective. In Florida, you were the youngest Florida bar president. I thought I was young, but you were far younger even. First Hispanic American Florida bar president. And to my knowledge, the only president of the three, which I'll say the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar, the president of that, president of the Florida Bar, and then president of the American Bar Association. So that's a long way of saying not only are you highly credentialed, and I don't know how you've made any money in your career doing all that volunteer work, but I'm curious. I think people will be curious. Were those different positions give you different perspectives, or were they all very similar in a lot of ways?
Well, you hope you grow from each experience and you learn from your past mistakes. And what you really find is in some ways they're all interrelated. The people you meet as a young lawyer and that I worked with in the Young Lawyers Division, I worked with as president of the Florida Bar and then later in the ABA. So I almost think that without one, the others wouldn't have existed for me. So I do think that it was part of who I am, because I can't really in many ways separate one from the other. But the issues remain the same. Professionalism, lawyer advertising was always very significant issue when I was president of the Florida Bar and later on. Professionalism continues to be a problem that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. The interesting thing about Florida is that we've had more presidents of the ABA than any other state. And what happens is, for some reason, anything that affects the profession happens first in Florida. And we have to learn how to deal with it. And other bar associations around the country always come to Florida and ask, how did you handle this matter? What can we learn from you? How can you help us? So, like I say, there's a lot of interrelationships between those different positions that I held.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you sort of brought it up, and it sort of leads to one of my last questions. But what do you see in Florida, sort of coming down the pipe, or something that's here that's maybe not quite there for the rest of the country, or that we're working on or should be working on, to continue what you mentioned as sort of being leaders around the country as far as bar associations go?
There is nothing more concerning to everybody today than the social issues facing our nation. And so many of those issues really start with the law. And I believe that Florida will once again be at the forefront of these issues, confronting them, coming up with solutions, and learning from the past mistakes to a much better future. Someone said to me a while back that if you were a doctor 100 years ago and you were transferred to a hospital operating room today, you would have no idea what you were seeing and what was happening. But if you were a lawyer practicing 100 years ago and you were transferred to a courtroom today, you probably have no problem at all understanding and proceeding to do your job. I think we can learn from the past. I think we can do a better job going forward. And I think that we'll continue to be the profession the nation looks to for guidance on the social issues, the moral issues, and the legal issues.
Well, being the senior president on this interview, being just the two of us, you get to have the last word. You get the concluding remarks. So, whatever you want to say to our members, considering that those tuning in are going to be witnessing the first ever virtual convention of the Florida Bar.
Well, I was thinking about your year, John, preparing for this discussion. And for some reason, and maybe the good Lord has something to do with it, we seem to always have the right leader at the right time. I think of Churchill during World War II as being the right leader for that nation and the world. And you are the ideal leader to lead us through a very difficult time. We've gone through a lot of crisis. You've managed it extremely well. You've had balance and intelligence and judgment that we needed desperately. I congratulate you on a wonderful year. And I'll just leave you with the words that I was left with many years ago from Chesterfield Smith, who I still think is the greatest president that we've ever had in the Florida bar, the American bar, who had a very simple statement, which is do good. And I think that still applies today. Let's do good.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for your kind words. It means a lot coming from you, and it's great words of wisdom. And thanks for your time. I know you're crazy busy. You're all over the world still. You're still a sought out consultant and speaker, aside from really actually still practicing law. And I'll always remember that, notwithstanding the fact that I'm a little lawyer from a little town, when I came to see you in your fancy office in Miami, you gave me your cell number and told me to call you anytime. And a few times I did, and you never hesitated to answer. So it's that I hope I can pay forward. So thanks for your time, and look forward to a time when we can catch up face to face.
I'm going to miss you, and I'm going to miss all the folks that I always see at this Florida Bar Convention, which to me it's almost like a homecoming event every year. And we all seem to get a little older, a little wiser, a little grayer, as you can see. But there's friends of a lifetime that will always be my friends, and hopefully next year we'll be celebrating in person.
Great. Well, stay safe, and we will see you soon.
Look forward to it.